Federal agents have just executed coordinated raids across Greenland, seizing 4 tons of narcotics and arresting 27 government officials.
30:47 a.m. Nuuk, Greenland. FBI Special Task Forces, working in joint coordination with Danish intelligence and Europol rapid response units, executed simultaneous breach operations across 11 locations spanning the island's western coastline. In a single night, federal agents seized 2 tons of cocaine, 8 tons of methamphetamine, 1 million fentanyl pills, and 340 million in cryptocurrency assets frozen across 47 different wallet addresses. They arrested 93 individuals, 27 of them held government positions, 14 carried diplomatic credentials. But here is what made investigators go silent in that first hour. Hidden beneath a fish processing facility in Ilulissat, agents discovered a server farm, not a small operation. 47 blade servers running encrypted communication networks that connected directly to banking institutions in Luxembourg, shell companies in the Cayman Islands, and, most disturbing of all, classified procurement systems linked to NATO defense contractors. This was not drug trafficking. This was infrastructure, and the man at the center of it all, a fictional figure we will call Governor Henrik Madsen, the appointed territorial administrator of Greenland's Eastern Autonomous Zone, a man who shook hands with European ministers, a man who appeared at climate summits advocating for Arctic sustainability, a man who, according to the files recovered that night, had been running the largest cartel logistics hub in the Northern Hemisphere for over 6 years. Stay with me, because what comes next is worse. Let me take you back to the moment the first door came down. 4:32 a.m., Nuuk, temperature -14 degrees Celsius. The fog rolled in off the Davis Strait, so thick you could barely see the harbor lights 20 meters away. The streets were dead. The only sound was wind cutting through the narrow alleys between prefabricated housing blocks. Then came the helicopter. 3 Black Hawks descended through the cloud cover like shadows dropping from the sky. No running lights. No warning. FBI hostage rescue team operators fast, roped onto the roof of a warehouse complex near the commercial port. Simultaneously, DEA tactical units breached from the ground floor. ICE enforcement officers secured the perimeter. Danish Politiets Actionstyrke, their elite counter-terrorism unit, held the outer cordon. This was not improvised. This was surgical. Inside, agents found exactly what intelligence had predicted: a drug superlab hidden behind legitimate fishing equipment. Industrial-grade pill presses capable of producing 400,000 fentanyl pills per day. Chemical precursors shipped in barrels labeled as cleaning supplies. And workers, 18 of them, most of whom did not speak Danish. Most of whom had been trafficked from Central America through a network of shell companies posing as seasonal labor recruiters. Human trafficking, drug manufacturing, international logistics, all under one roof. But the real discovery came 45 minutes into the operation. An agent named Rivera, working with the cyber forensics attachment, found a hidden panel behind a wall of refrigeration units. Behind that panel was a steel door. Behind that door was a room no larger than a shipping container. Inside were 3 servers, encrypted, military-grade protection, and a single laminated document bearing the official seal of the Greenland Territorial Authority, signed by Governor Henrik Madsen, authorizing the facility's construction under a federal infrastructure grant designed to support Arctic fishing community. The cartel had built their operation using government money, and no one had asked a single question. 72 hours later, FBI Cyber Division Headquarters, Quantico, Virginia. Analysts had been working around the clock to crack the encryption on those servers. When they finally broke through, what they saw made even senior investigators pause. On screen, a network diagram, hundreds of nodes, thousands of connection lines, shell companies in 12 countries, ghost corporations registered in jurisdictions with no disclosure requirement, offshore accounts holding assets in excess of $118 billion, fake nonprofit foundations claiming to support Arctic indigenous communities while funneling cash to cartel logistics coordinators. The operation had a code name, Project Nordlys, named after the Northern Lights, because, according to internal cartel communications, the operation was designed to be beautiful from a distance, but impossible to touch. Here is what Project Nordlys actually was: a complete redesign of North Atlantic drug trafficking. Instead of pushing product through traditional routes, Caribbean corridors, Mexican border crossings, Pacific shipping lanes, the cartel had built an entirely new supply chain. Cocaine processed in Colombia was shipped to West Africa. From there, it moved to fishing vessels operating out of Cape Verde. Those vessels transferred cargo to legitimate Greenlandic trawlers in international waters. The trawlers returned to ports controlled by shell companies under Governor Madsen's protection. From Greenland, the product moved to Iceland, then to Norway, then to the European Union through Denmark. No southern border inspections, no DEA interdiction zones, no Coast Guard patrols. The Arctic route was completely clean, and the tariff scheme. That was the genius part. Governor Madsen had lobbied European trade officials for years to create special exemptions for Greenlandic export, climate, vulnerable territory, indigenous economic development, green energy partnership. Every argument designed to reduce customs scrutiny and create fast, track import channels. When investigators mapped the tariff exemptions against cartel shipping manifests, the correlation was almost perfect. Every exemption Madsen secured corresponded to a spike in narcotics volume entering the European market. $200 billion in trade policy, weaponized for drug trafficking. This is not corruption. This is economic warfare disguised as diplomacy. But here is where the story splits in a direction no one anticipated. The protests, January 19th, the same day as the raids. 20,000 people flooding the streets of Nuuk, burning vehicles, throwing rocks at police cordons, chanting slogans against what they called American imperialism and NATO occupation. At first, investigators assumed the protests were organic, local anger at foreign intervention, nationalist sentiment inflamed by the dramatic military presence. Then they found the receipts. Buried in the servers from the Ilulissat facility was a sub-folder labeled Civil Operations. Inside were payment records, bus rentals, catering contracts, printed banner orders, social media advertising budgets targeting demographic groups most likely to respond to anti-American messaging. The cartel had organized the protests themselves. Every burning car, every thrown bottle, every viral video of chaos in the Arctic streets, manufactured distraction designed to overwhelm local law enforcement, consume media attention, and create political pressure to halt the federal operation before investigators could reach the deeper layers of the network. 20,000 people. Most of them had no idea who was paying for the signs they carried. This is how modern cartels operate. They do not just smuggle drugs. They engineer narrative. They weaponize public sentiment. They turn populations into shields. And in Greenland, they almost succeeded. 15 a.m. January 20th. Thule Air Base, northwestern Greenland. This is where the operation transformed from law enforcement into something closer to military doctrine. A joint command center had been established inside the base's tactical operations facility. Representatives from FBI, DEA ICE, DHS, Danish military intelligence, and NATO security coordination were all present. On the wall-mounted screens, a digital map of Greenland with over 100 red markers pulsing across the territory. Every marker represented a confirmed cartel asset: safe houses, drug storage facilities, human trafficking transit points, encrypted communication relay stations, money laundering fronts posing as tourism companies and adventure outfitters. The commanding officer, a fictional figure we will call General Patricia Vance, U.S. Army Northern Command, addressed the room. Ladies and gentlemen, in the next 6 hours, we are going to dismantle an organization that has spent 6 years embedding itself into the infrastructure of an allied territory. We will be executing coordinated operations across 73 separate locations. We will have air support from the 109th Airlift Wing. We will have maritime interdiction assets from the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Healy and the Danish naval vessel Knud Rasmussen. And we will have ground forces numbering over 800 personnel, including FBI tactical teams, DEA strike units, and Danish special operations. She paused. What we are about to do has never been attempted in the Arctic. There is no playbook for this. We are writing it tonight. At 60:00 a.m., the operation began. Black Hawk helicopters lifted off from Thule carrying rapid response teams. C-130 aircraft dropped equipment caches at forward staging areas across the ice sheet. Naval vessels moved into position along the western coastline to intercept any fleeing vessels. The raids hit in waves. First wave the port facilities. Nuuk, Ilulissat, Sisimiut. Agents breached warehouses, shipping offices, and dockside storage units simultaneously. They found cocaine packed into frozen fish shipments, methamphetamine hidden in machinery crates, fentanyl pills disguised as legitimate pharmaceutical supplies destined for Arctic health clinics. Second wave, the administrative targets. Governor Madsen's private residence, his government offices, the homes of 17 territorial officials identified in the encrypted communications as cartel coordinated. Madsen himself was arrested at 60:47 a.m. while attempting to board a private aircraft at a remote airstrip near Kangerlussuaq. He was carrying 3 encrypted phones, 2 passports under different names, and a briefcase containing 2 toy. 8 million in bearer bonds. Third wave, the underground network. Drug tunnels discovered beneath a construction site near Nuuk's expanding industrial district. Human trafficking safe houses where investigators found 23 migrants being held for transport to European labor exploitation networks. A hidden server farm inside an abandoned mining facility that served as the backup communication hub for Project Nordlys. By noon, the operation had produced over 200 arrests. Agents had seized an additional 4 tons of narcotics, 190 million in assets, and enough encrypted data to fuel investigations for years. The Arctic underworld had been gutted in a single morning, but the deeper revelations were still coming. 3 days later, FBI headquarters, Washington, D.C. Analysts had been processing the seized data continuously since the raids. What they found in Governor Madsen's personal files rewrote the entire understanding of the operation. Madsen had not been working for a Mexican cartel. He had been building a new one. The documents revealed a consortium: European financiers, Russian logistics specialists, Chinese manufacturing contacts, and yes, operational muscle sourced from Sinaloa cartel veterans who had been pushed out during internal power struggles. The Nordic Alliance. That was what Madsen called it in his private communications. A new organization designed to operate entirely outside traditional cartel territory. No Mexican border exposure, no Colombian jungle operations, no Central American transit routes that attracted American attention. Instead, Arctic logistics, European distribution, Asian manufacturing partnership, a truly global criminal enterprise with no geographic headquarters and no single national vulnerability. And Madsen was not just a participant, he was the architect. The files showed years of planning. Meetings with investment bankers in Zurich, negotiations with shipping executives in Rotterdam, recruitment of corrupt officials across Scandinavian countries who could provide customs exemptions, port access, and law enforcement blind spots. The 200 billion tariff scheme was not incidental, it was foundational. By manipulating NATO trade policy, by positioning Greenland as a climate, vulnerable territory deserving of economic protection, Madsen had created a legal framework that made his entire smuggling operation virtually invisible to normal oversight. Customs officials waved shipments through because the paperwork said they should. Investigators never looked because the trade agreements said there was nothing to find. This is not corruption in the traditional sense. This is systems engineering. Madsen had redesigned international trade policy to serve cartel logistics. And the most disturbing part, the files suggested he was not finished. Phase 3 of Project Nordlys outlined plans to expand operations into Canada's northern territories, Alaska's remote coastal community, and eventually Iceland as a permanent European distribution hub. Within 5 years, according to Madsen's projections, the Nordic Alliance would have controlled 40% of cocaine distribution in Western Europe and would have established the first significant Arctic methamphetamine production capacity. The future of organized crime was being built in the ice, and almost no one knew it existed. But let me tell you what haunts investigators most about this case. It is not the drugs. It is not the money. It is not even the scale of the conspiracy. It is the infiltration of legitimate institutions. When analysts examined the law enforcement records recovered from the seized servers, they found payment schedule, regular deposits into accounts held by 47 different individuals, police officers, border patrol agents, immigration officials, even 2 prosecutors assigned to Arctic territorial courts. These were not one-time bribes. These were salaries, monthly payments, benefits packages, performance bonuses for successfully protecting cartel shipments, or alerting coordinators to upcoming inspections. One customs official had been on cartel payroll for 4 years. During that time, he had processed over 200 shipments containing concealed narcotics. His accumulated payments totaled $2 million. He was not acting alone. He was part of a system. The cartel had built a parallel enforcement structure, a shadow version of legitimate law enforcement that existed specifically to protect their operations and neutralize any threats. When honest officers reported suspicious activities, those reports were intercepted by compromised supervisors. When investigations were launched, they were steered toward dead ends by prosecutors receiving cartel money. When raids were planned, the targets received advance warning through leaked operational schedule. The badge had been compromised from the inside, and the officers who remained honest, they were devastated. One Danish inspector, interviewed after the operation, described the moment he realized his own supervisor had been protecting cartel operations for years. I filed 17 reports, he said. 17 times I documented suspicious shipment. 17 times I was told there was insufficient evidence to proceed. I thought I was failing. I thought I was incompetent. Now I understand. The system was designed to make me fail. Federal authorities have announced that every territorial law enforcement officer in Greenland will be subject to comprehensive vetting. New oversight mechanisms will be implemented. The entire structure will be rebuilt from the ground up. But the damage has been done. Trust, once broken at this level, takes generations to restore. Now let me show you the continental scale. Because Greenland was not an isolated operation. It was a hub. The network mapping from Project Nordlys revealed connections to 16 different countries across 3 continents. In Colombia, cartel-controlled coca processing facilities were shipping refined cocaine to West African transit points specifically designated for the Arctic route. In Morocco, hashish production operations were exploring partnership arrangements to diversify the product portfolio moving through Greenland. In the Netherlands, distribution networks were receiving shipments from Greenlandic fishing vessels that had been modified with hidden cargo compartments. In Germany, Austria, and France, street-level dealers were purchasing product that had entered Europe through the Danish customs corridor, product that had never passed through traditional interdiction zones. The scale was staggering. Conservative estimates suggest that, at its peak, Project Nordlys was moving approximately 2.4 tons of cocaine per month into European market. That represents roughly 180 million in street value monthly. And because the Arctic Road avoided all traditional enforcement choke points, the loss rate was almost zero. No seized shipments. No intercepted vessels, no burned product. Pure profit flowing directly into cartel accounts. The fentanyl operation was even more disturbing. Manufacturing facilities in Greenland were producing synthetic opioids using precursor chemicals shipped from Chinese suppliers through shell companies in Kazakhstan. These pills were then distributed across Scandinavian countries, where opioid abuse rates had been climbing steadily for years. Investigators found evidence that over 400,000 fentanyl pills per week were entering European circulation through the Nordic Alliance network. The death toll, impossible to calculate precisely, but public health officials in Denmark, Norway, and Sweden have reported significant increases in synthetic opioid fatalities over the past 3 years. Those deaths have names, they have families, they have communities that will never fully recover. And every single one of those pills passed through an operation that was protected by government officials, enabled by trade policy, and invisible to the agencies designed to stop it. So where does this leave us? Governor Henrik Madsen is in federal custody awaiting extradition proceeding. His assets have been frozen globally. His associates are being arrested across multiple countries as cooperative investigations continue. The Nordic Alliance, as an operational entity, has been dismantled. But the lesson of this case extends far beyond one man and one organization. What Greenland showed us is that the future of organized crime is not about violence. It is not about territorial control. It is not about the traditional markers that law enforcement has learned to recognize. The future is infrastructure. The future is policy manipulation. The future is building legitimate-looking systems that serve illegitimate purposes so completely that no one thinks to question them. Madsen did not threaten anyone. He did not assassinate rivals. He did not engage in the public brutality that defines traditional cartel operations. He filed paperwork. He attended meetings. He shook hands with ministers and signed trade agreements. And through those actions, through the patient, systematic manipulation of legal and bureaucratic frameworks, he built an empire that moved billions of dollars worth of poison into communities across an entire continent. Power does not always announce itself with gunfire. Sometimes it only needs silence, patience, and ambition disguised as public service. If you are still with me, I need to tell you something. This story is fictional. The names are invented. The specific events are dramatized, but the patterns are real. The exploitation of trade policy for criminal logistics, the infiltration of law enforcement by organized crime, the use of manufactured social unrest as operational cover, the weaponization of climate narratives for economic advantage. These are documented tactics. They are happening right now, in various forms across the globe. The question is whether we pay attention. The question is whether we demand accountability from the systems that are supposed to protect us. The question is whether we recognize that the most dangerous criminals do not look like criminals at all. They look like administrators, executive, appointed officials with impressive credentials and reassuring smiles. If this story reached you, if it made you think differently about the intersection of politics, policy, and organized crime, then it did its job. Tap like so more people see this. Comment, expose. If you believe these patterns deserve more attention, share this with someone who needs to understand how deep institutional corruption can really go, because awareness is the first defense, and silence is exactly what they are counting on.